reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot and a happy new year. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 213, and we have got a packed show for you today. We've got a match to talk about. We've got a January transfer window, which is already popping off on both the men's and women's side to discuss as well. New signing, injuries, illness, managers being angry at the world. We've got it all to talk about today. We'll start by throwing it out to Caroline, who is at CG Stefko. Caroline, how are you on this fine Sunday?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I had a pretty chill weekend, spending time with family. My sister was visiting, so didn't spend too much time watching football other than Tottenham, so that was nice.
That's when you can limit it in that way. I'm not sure it's the best, but I'm happy to hear it. A happy new year as well to TC. He is at TC_Kasho on X and at the Todd Father on Blue Sky. Todd, what is up, my man?
Any day, Andrew, that you can get together with your mates and have a cathartic discussion about the flaming bag of dog poo that is PGMOL is a good fucking day, and I'm excited to do so.
Yeah, you're going to get someone on your side a little bit today in that regard, and his name is Andrew. It's yours truly, because I was a little fired up about this one, more than I usually get when it comes to officiating decisions, and we're going to talk about all of that, including Ange Postecoglou's reaction to that, which was a little surprising if you ask me, but we will dive right in. Before we do, I want to remind everyone, head over to digitalspurs.com for the latest Tottenham artwork. This is all kinds of different Tottenham artwork that Danny Garrison puts together, puts it to different apparel. We're talking like t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, hats, all kinds of different stuff. You see, if you're watching on the YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot, you can see us rocking some of it week to week. I've got my Tottenham Till I Die cap on today. We love Digital Spurs. Head on over to digitalspurs.com for some Tottenham gear and let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. We can dive right in, I guess, guys. There's only one match to talk about this week, and it was Tottenham Hotspur 1, Newcastle United 2 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. This was a match that I didn't really have a whole lot of expectation for, but of course, knowing what Spurs are facing right now, how could you? Spurs were down to playing Brendan Austin in goal, after 9 years at the club, making his first appearance for the club after illness struck the club this week. Illness, injury, just circumstances of poor play, all of it going. And Spurs, I thought, put together a decent enough effort against Newcastle United, despite a 2-1 result on the end. Now winless in 4 straight, as like I said, just it's injuries, it's illness, it's kind of the snowball continuing to roll downhill. First impressions after this one, Caroline, what's your takeaway after Tottenham lose another one?
Well, I had a very strange experience on Blue Sky yesterday where I had this sudden influx of Newcastle fans replying to one of my posts and basically, justifying their very negative, time-wasting style of football. And, that's fine for them. But I feel like if you're someone who's actually watching this sport with the view of like being entertained and being proud of your team, I feel like we couldn't really ask anything more of Tottenham yesterday. These players, it's got to be demoralizing, the situation they're in with the injuries, and then to have all of these illnesses pile up as well. I feel like they did the best they could. And honestly, if there had been a little bit better officiating, shall we say, I think we could have even gotten a point out of this at a minimum. So, I really have no fault with the players in this one. I feel like the effort was 100% there. And, there were some players who did not look even like they were 100% to be out on the pitch in the first place. So, my hat is off to them.
No, I think a number one in that conversation would probably be Radu Dragusin, who was taken off at halftime, and he was one of the ones that was mentioned as being, bedridden pretty much all week. Todd, what's your take on this? Because like I said, my expectations were not very high, but they were kind of almost met or succeeded for what Spurs have been giving us lately. What about you?
Yeah, you got to understand for those of us out here in the West Coast, the Pacific time zone, that's a 4:30 a.m. kickoff. And I'm seeing all these reports about how we have 7 first-team players in training the day before, and I'm like, man, this has a recipe for a 6-0 disaster written all over it, a 5-1 at St. James's Park. Like, I'm getting PTSD flashbacks on this, right?
I was going to say, we've seen those against Newcastle.
Indeed. So the fact that we came out of this with the scoreline that we got, anybody who just woke up and saw what that was and didn't have the misfortune of watching the actual match would go, man, that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And that's realistically the kind of overarching takeaway that you can have from this. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, in reality, it was shambolic from top to bottom. It was one of the most infuriating matches that I've seen in a long, long time. You just wanted to kick something in your house at multiple times during that match for a variety of reasons. From a team standpoint, however, I saw guts. And, for a team that was throwing up theirs less than 24 hours prior, it was cool to see that they actually still had something to give to the pitch. Like, Archie Gray was sick as a dog yesterday morning before that match and still went out there and played his tail off. Now, don't get me wrong. We struggled and we looked like a beaten, broken, beleaguered team. That still managed to go up a goal, Andrew, early on a diving header. Come on. That was
a beautiful goal.
For those who woke up at 4:30 in California, was a diving header in the first 5 minutes of the match or whatever. Like, the takeaway that I had for the team, and we'll come on to all the nonsense, but for the team, this is the type of gritty performance in the worst point of our season that galvanizes a group of players and allows them to build back stronger as you start getting pieces back, which we will start seeing pieces back this week. And so as we head into the business end of our season, which, as I've talked about multiple times on this podcast, talk to me after Christmas. Let's see what our January, February, March looks like, and I'll let you know how we're going to do. I still feel confident that we're going to make a late charge with the people that we've got coming back in and the potential signings that we're going to bring in this window, because though I've been hurting before by Daniel Levy and his fuckery, signing somebody within the first few hours of the window and then doing nothing for 30 days. My hope is that we're actually going to get some people across the line here in succession between these next important matches. Andrew.
And of course, it's January 5th, and they already have gotten one across the line, which we will discuss here in a little bit. I want to give the listeners and the viewers on the YouTube a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to how I watched this match. And I know this is going to tickle the both of you because I did not watch this game live, despite being, I'm not on the West Coast, but I'm more in the western part of the U.S. It was an early start for me, but I had other engagements yesterday morning. Came home, had no knowledge of what had gone on in the game, was on social media blackout. I do this often when I watch games and am not able to watch them live. But 8 minutes in, dropped you guys a little voice note and was fuming. And I'm not the type, as longtime listeners of the Tottenham Depot will know, I am not the type to go off on officiating. For me, it's like you get some breaks, you don't get some breaks. TC, you and I have clashed over this over the years a little bit, which is totally fine. It's like it's part of the beauty of it. It's part of the beauty of football. But I went off because I was in the same kind of fuck the PGMOL mode and fuck VAR mode that you typically are in during this match, even though it wasn't during the match. It was during my watching of the match. So it was a little bit funny in terms of the timeline. But I, like you said, you just wanted to kick something. And I went into this match with no real expectation. And then after the Joelinton handball that was for naught, I kind of just was kicked back and like enjoying every moment of Brandon Austin being fired up and these guys, like you said, giving a gritty, gutty performance that gave me a little bit of pride in being a Spurs fan. And I'm not trying to turn this into like we are not happy clappers here. We criticize when needed to, but like for the most part, I think we've been a pretty positive podcast for the most part in terms of how shitty this season has been and how much of a struggle it has been. All of us are still kind of here along for the ride and here for the party. And yesterday, I agree with you, Todd. It showed me something despite the defeat against what is right now a far superior team. But Ange Postecoglou was the one that I was really surprised that was kind of on all of our side in this. And he went off after the match. And I want to play a little bit of what he said. And it's a brief little bit. I'm sure if you've been following any of this, you've heard it already. But like, this is about as poignant and pointed as we've heard Ange Postecoglou in a post-match press conference.
All I'll say is that on any other day, on a fair and even playing ground, we would have won that game. Simple as that. And don't keep asking me about the decision. If you guys have no opinion about it, that's fine. I know what my opinion is. And as I said, if that was a different day and it was an even and fair playing ground, we would have won that game.
So I want to talk a little bit about that because before we even talk about the players on the pitch, because Ange Postecoglou, does not do this very often. He does not go. He repeated lines in pretty much every single answer that he gave during the 4.5, 5-minute press conference after the match, and was as pointed and angry as I've heard him since he joined Tottenham Hotspur. Caroline, were you surprised by this reaction from Ange Postecoglou?
Yes, because, like you said, this is kind of not his typical press conference form. I feel like he usually is a lot more circumspect and won't really say what his emotions are. He kind of tries to keep it a little more level-headed. But I totally understand this reaction from him because we're already at a massive disadvantage, obviously, when it comes to the defense right now, because we don't even have, we had one actual center back playing the game and he only lasted a half. So that kind of illustrates what the situation is. So we don't exactly need the officials bungling really obvious decisions and putting us at, further disadvantage. So from that perspective, I totally get it. I also, before recording, was listening to Ange's interview with the club, on the review show. And he was just as fired up in that one, but kind of took the opposite tack of being really, supportive of the players basically, and saying like he was really happy with everything that he saw, and the effort that they put in. So to me, you take those together and it feels like he's just trying to, like you said, galvanize the team around this difficult moment and, provide a little bit of motivation going forward because, we are going to get some players back from injury soon, but it's still going to be tough going for the next few weeks. And I feel like that he felt like this was what the players needed from him, was for him to be really, a champion of the team, I guess.
TC, what's your reaction to Ange's angry rant after the game?
That's my fucking manager. That's my reaction. Is I've been saying that shit for weeks, if not years. And this guy has done a very, very good job of playing the political manager, and they're going to make their decisions on the pitch. And, I'm not here to talk about what decisions have been made. I'm just here to, play our types of football, mate. And like he said all the things for a year and a half. And this fuckery is still going on right now. And Ange is finally like, you guys are ridiculous. You guys are out here questioning my tactics, saying that it's my stubbornness that's leading to these results. And you've got your referees thumbing their ass in the middle of the pitch instead of making the calls that they're supposed to make. And then looking at VAR, and you can literally, I like Caroline's point, release the tapes. You can literally hear the people in the VAR booth, when the time comes, we'll hear it, trying to sell the referee on why that Joe Linton isn't a handball. This is how this shit works. And I'm going, this is not the point of video assistant referee, is for your fucking opinion of what you saw on the pitch to override the rule book. Ange knows that. I know that. You know that. And the majority of Tottenham supporters know that as well. The problem is that when you look at the results, regardless of the injury crisis, anybody from the outside looking in, just looking at results, can go, see, fucking Tottenham's going to Tottenham. This guy's lost 10 Premier League matches. Like, at this point of the season, like, you guys are mid fucking table. Like, you're over here whining about Conte and Jose, and both those guys got sacked in Champions League, seasons, and la da 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 da. I went off on some folks on social media yesterday because I don't suffer fools gladly. And when you're looking at this and you take a step back, this is what a rebuild looks like, Andrew. And so for Ange coming out saying, hey, while we're in the middle of this rebuild, it'd be really fucking cool if we could get a legitimate playing field to actually compete against instead of you guys making up shit as you go along. I don't think that's out of line at all. I
don't either. What about the Caroline? What about the actual decision itself? Like, let's talk about that for a second, because and we'll talk about the goal some more. Like, Spurs go up early, and then moments later we get this, and it's like, really, is that how this is going to go? Because for a second there, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, is this going to be like one of those weird Spurs are down, backs against the wall, Brandon Austin in goal, everybody's sick or injured, and Spurs are going to come out and do something, and then they basically got the rug pulled out from under them by this decision or lack thereof. But what about that decision itself? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mentioned my sister was here this weekend, and I turned to her and was like, don't worry, this is going to get called off. That's the most obvious handball I've ever seen. Like, everyone could see that on the pitch. Everyone's just like up in arms, like, yo, we all saw this. And it seems like this should be the definition of a clear and obvious error that VAR is supposed to intervene in. And essentially what I've seen was the argument for allowing it to stand is that the handball did not occur in the immediate, build up to the goal, to which I say that is absolute bullshit. And y'all know I don't like to curse, but I just cannot believe that.
No, but the word bullshit, the word bullshit is apt here. You're more than free.
It is, because this handball by Joelinton quite literally gave them possession, and it was the pre-assist. I don't know how much more close to the buildup of a goal you can get than that. So I just don't understand it from that perspective, because my understanding has always been that the handball rule is going to be more strict when you're in an attacking series of play. Like, you cannot score from a handball.
Well, it certainly was for Eric Dyer against Newcastle.
I'm glad you bring that up, Todd, because I was going to say, I feel like Eric Dyer and Lucas Moura both would have some questions about this decision.
The Lucas Moura
shoulder one is one I've still have not gotten it.
Yeah, that was the cartwheel one, right?
Yeah, where he gets bungled over, it bounces off his shoulder into the path of Harry Kane, who laces it in, and they call it off for a handball.
It's just it's curious to me. It's curious to me when a handball is deemed intentional and when that actually matters, because it seems like the rule is constantly shifting. Well, so I was pretty pissed off about this one.
What side of the rule is Tottenham on, and how can we fuck them, is what it felt like. And the rough part, Andrew, and this is the part that I really loved about your commentary on the game yesterday,
which is despite calls, is not going to be released to the public. That is an internal message.
My favorite part of your commentary on the match yesterday was how shit the actual commentary was.
Yeah, and I was going to get to that too, because and I'm, if you don't mind, I'm going to take the runway here for a moment, because the thing that I think pissed me off even more, and I don't get up in arms about, there's two things I don't really get up in arms about. It's officiating and it's comms. The commentary yesterday on this match was puzzling, because they were questioning why Spurs were trying to go so fast after, like, Brandon Austin gets the ball and he's immediately trying to get rid of it. And to an extent, I can see why that would be the case. Brandon Austin's making his first start for this club after 9 years there. It's an emergency situation, all the caveats included. But this is Ange ball. And also, this is Ange ball depleted and back up against the wall against a Newcastle team that is flying in form and that you're trying to make something happen. So the blame for that entire incident was somehow placed on Spurs trying to move quickly from defense to counterattack. And I don't understand how the handball got lost in all of that. The commentary was basically putting the blame on Brandon Austin and Lucas Bergvall for what happened, when they were trying to play Ange ball. They were trying to move quickly and counterattack? Because how are you going as Tottenham Hotspur in this scenario? How are you going to go score goals? You're going to need to do a little bit of counterattacking. By the way, sounds like a pretty much a nice plan B, maybe even C or D from Ange Postecoglou in a way to play against Newcastle and a way to try and get something from a game. We'll check that box for Ange. I'm happy to see it. But like, why so much criticism for a style of play that we've been seeing for 18 months? And he said repeatedly, we're not going to change. It was baffling to me.
Well, it's not baffling to me. And what it is that I've watched English commentary now for over a decade. And when they don't like something, they just continue to talk about how shit it is until the noise and the clamoring of the fan base gets too loud. And then that goes by the wayside. Jose parking the bus is a great example.
Well, I would also like to reiterate that Lucas's pass would have come off if Joelinton had not stopped it with his hand.
If his hand wouldn't have been there, yes.
Speaking of handballs,
it's a big part of it.
What are we doing?
Speaking of handballs, can we please talk about the fuckery that was Dan Burns' fucking jumping star punch of the ball,
which
already on a yellow card?
Yes. Yes.
There was like a 15-minute period at the start of this game where it was just like bad decision after bad decision. And I felt like I was going crazy because it's like, is this referee watching the same game that we're all watching? He totally lost control. And this was not a game where, we could afford for that kind of environment with the team that we had. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Andrew Madley, for those of you playing at home and want to send him very nice messages.
Andy Madley did not have a good day. I think we can probably leave it at that. Look, the Ange reaction to me is it's going to be like the headline coming out of this, and a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, it's just sour grapes." But like when you're in like looking internally as Spurs fans and as a club, you're probably thinking, "Fine, let that be the headline from this game, that it's just sour grapes, that we got gypped." I'm fine with that because I think Spurs fans know what this match was and how it played. And look, the other thing is, I don't think Spurs played well enough to win the game. It's not like I'm saying, like, I'm not going to agree with Ange and say they win that game easily without the quote unquote fair and even playing ground, but Spurs were game for it. And I think that's what I'm most heartened by, and what I'm most intrigued by even, is that Ange got this team after, a few days away. There was no midweek game, and then illness strikes and injuries are still there. We haven't even talked about Destiny Udogie, who's going to be out now for probably two months or so with his injury that he picked up last week. Like, all the different moving parts that Ange just had to deal with. And he got this team to show up and to perform in the way that he did against Newcastle. I want to start going through a couple of the performances in the game. We talked a lot about Brendan Austin already, but I just want to say that, like, credit to him, like pretty well done. I don't think he's any kind of a long-term answer. And obviously we've got a lot more goalkeeper things to discuss during this podcast, but I was happy to see what he was able to do. He was taking charge on corners. Newcastle was quite obviously trying to fuck with him for lack of a better term, a lot. And he was kind of game for it. He was kind of like, I know what you're doing. It's fine. I'm here. He was taking charge. He seemed to be mostly in control. He was definitely a little rushed at times, but that's to be expected. You're making your first start for the club and against Newcastle in a big spot. Like, what Caroline, what did you have to say about Brendan Austin just in general?
Well, I think his performance just speaks to the fact that the players obviously are still 100% behind Ange, because we're talking about a player here who literally making his first appearance for the club after all these years. He's been in training all this time, though, and he's obviously bought into the style of play enough that he was able to come in on short notice and execute. We're not going to say he had a perfect performance, but I feel like overall, this kind of just reinforces that the team is behind Ange, and that is from, the very back of the pitch with the keeper all the way up to Solanke, who, as usual, put in just the most effort of almost anyone on the pitch.
TC, what about you?
Yeah, I thought for a guy who's most professional experience has come in the second division in Danish football, I thought he had a hell of a day.
Is that MLS slander I hear from you, Todd?
He only played 5 matches for Orlando City. But yes, general MLS slander is approved.
Likewise.
Yeah. So, no, I thought he did a fine job, right? He looked like a backup keeper. He looked like a
Yeah.
backup keeper. He looked a hell of a lot more like a backup keeper than Fraser Forster. So
That is notable.
indeed, right? So I don't know what that showed me from his performance. What it showed me is that he's picking up what Ange is wanting him to do. He's certainly more stout than Vicario, right? So I think as you're talking about him taking charge on corners, like being 6'5" and almost 200 pounds, that's helpful, right? Like, but as we're going to come on to, like, he's not the answer, and so, but if I have to go with Brandon Austin for the next couple of weeks, I don't think that there's a significant drop off between the level of play that he showed us yesterday and what we've seen from Fraser Forster. So
fair enough. A couple of the other players I wanted to touch on. I thought Lucas Bergvall looked really, really good in the 62 or so minutes that he was on the pitch. He just was active. And I think that that's something that has been missing from the 6 role and from that kind of deep ball playing midfielder role. And I don't know that that's his long-term place, but it was interesting to me. And I just kind of wanted to note that. The other player was Pedro Porro, who I thought had an excellent game. Obviously, whipped in the cross to Dom Solanke's head early on, but was just really active, not only defensively, but getting forward, whipping crosses in. And he's kind of, I mean, it actually made me write down in my notes, what is Pedro Porro's contract status, which I forgot to look up. Like, I know he's around, like he's not going anywhere, but like, man, it made me really appreciative that Pedro Porro is like the dude at right back for this team. He's really turned into something, and just wanted to shout Pedro Porro out and give him a little bit of appreciation. And then the other kind of note that I had is just the decision that Ange made, which he addressed after the match because he was asked about it, to leave James Madison, Heung-min Son, and Ibasuma on the bench for this match and bring them off. Part of it, I think, due to just the illness that was rampant, but also I think he wanted some of that experience and fresh legs coming off the bench with about 30 minutes to go. And I actually kind of think that despite the scoreline, that worked, because when those guys came on, they looked pretty bright, especially, weirdly enough, especially Basuma. I thought he looked pretty bright coming in and made some really good defensive challenges and cleaned some things up. Any thoughts on those bullet points that I wanted to get out, Caroline?
Well, on Lucas, I think definitely he seems to be a better fit for like an Ange ball 6, in the sense that he's willing to take risks and is a little more progressive, I think, than our other options at the moment. But obviously he still has a lot of developing to do, and we all know that. So it's getting this game time now is going to be really beneficial later on. Just, we can't expect him to be the flawless product yet, I don't think. But I agree with you for sure about, that decision to bench some of the more senior players to start, because we also have to think about the fact that we've got a really, really important game midweek that you want them to be available for. And if they've been struggling with illness, it's not a risk you can take to have them play 90 minutes. I mean, even Son, when he came on, he did not look very well. I mean, he was looking a little ashen. And I know
he looked better than Timo Werner, I will say that.
Yeah.
Which is not hard to do, but
I just mean, like, physically he did not look 100%. So it was a little painful to watch some of these players, and like Radu in the first half, having to get out there and play, because they should not have been out there. But we're in a situation where we just don't have a whole lot of choice. But I think it's going to be a good thing that he, Son and Madison are going to have a little bit more freshness for the Liverpool game, because we're really going to need them to perform in that one.
Well, and that was the other call, TC, that I wanted to bring up. Caroline, you mentioned Radu coming off at half. The move there was to bring Sergio Reguilon at left back and move Jed Spence from left back to right center back. Like, sure. Why the hell? What? I mean, and honestly, Jed Spence kind of did a job. Like, it wasn't horrendous. Like, this is kind of where we are and what we're talking about with Ange Postecoglou. He is putting all of the square pegs into round holes, and like, it's not working, but it is. I don't know what to make of that.
So let's just kind of address those things. I thought that I thought Bergvall played well. I still want more production from him. He's so bright, but sometimes I feel like he confuses action for accomplishment, which is normal when you're this age, right?
Sure.
Like that anxious puppy dog. Just how can I help? What can I do? I'm right here. And that's kind of how he played yesterday. So I appreciated him being there. I want more. When he feels like he has time, he is so creative. But I feel as though he's so rushed because this league is so fast and so physical. I think when you give him about another year, I think that he's going to settle into his own skin and do really, really well. I agree that the illness bug and the Liverpool match the Liverpool match midweek is the reason for the rotational piece for Sonny and Matters. But we all know what fucking Basuma is. I'm really tired of talking about him, to be entirely candid with you.
I am too, to be honest with you. But we're gonna have to keep talking about him because I don't think Spurs are bringing in a new number 6. Right
I don't know, dude. Johnny Cardozo? Who knows? I'm just saying. I don't know if that's an improvement. To be entirely candid,
I don't either.
I don't know that that's an improvement. Like the thing is that we bring in all these other players and stuff, and there's just a certain element in the midfield, especially in the defensive midfielder role, where like. You can either stand your ground and fuck people up in this league, or you can get run over and get fucked up in this league. And it's like, and we see it week after week after week. And I think that Ange 6 is requiring a skill set that is not very easy to find and is way more easy to cultivate. I think when Bentancur is back, he's obviously the starter in this system, whether you like him or not. I think he'll start midweek, right? We get him back midweek, yes?
Yeah, I would assume he does, and honestly, we may see some combination of both he and Basuma in that midfield. Just for
Where's Sarr? Is Sarr sick as a dog as well?
I think everybody's sick, man. I think I'm sick. Like it's everybody. I think I've caught it somehow. This is where we're at. The only other thing I do want to touch on is I guess we're going to see more of Sergio Reguilon because of Udogie's injury, just as a rotational piece, which is wild to me. There was a moment that the camera caught during this match late on where he was like pumping up the crowd and like trying to get like there was a moment, I guess a ball went out for a corner or something, and he was like shown like lifting his arms up, trying Reguilon, and the crowd kind of reacted to him, and I was like, what world is it that it's January the 4th and inside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Sergio Reguilon, by the way, January 4th, 2025, and Sergio Reguilon is pumping the South Stand up like while coming in and playing left back, like just mind-boggling to me.
He has always been, Caroline, he has always been the chairman of Vibes FC.
I was going to say, and a fan favorite, like pretty much from the moment he joined. So it makes sense.
I don't know that he has the Ange ball thing. I don't know that he's that guy, but I guess
I can tell you right now, he's not that guy.
Right. But because of the injuries,
listen, a capable left back, and he's capable of running up and down the pitch with people. That's what he's capable of doing. Again, one of those excited Chihuahua type guys, very much an excited Chihuahua type guy. You kind of need those guys, especially when you're going through a lull and people are injured, right? The truth is that Destiny Udogie has not been healthy since he came back from injury. He rushed to get back. He has not been the same Destiny Udogie that we bought from Udinese. And I really hope that we just shut him the fuck down for the rest of the year and we ride. They're targeting a couple of guys that can play left back or left center back, left wing back. And I hope that we bring one in because I don't want to see Destiny again if we can help it. I want him to rehab over the summer, maybe stay home from Italy duty and kind of get his shit together. That would be really, really cool for him to hang out the lodge and kind of pull a Decky from last year and just kind of go to the lab and get some work in. I think that'd be really beneficial for his career and for Spurs as a whole. Because right now he's not what we need. And fortunately, because he's not what we need, the drop off to Sergio Reguilon when he's going to come in and play that side isn't too terrible. Now, fortunately, we're going to see Jed Spence there, from what I understand, as the starter going the rest of the way. But when you're getting into those Europa League matches, Andrew, there's no Jed Spence. That's right. So
at least for the next 2 Europa League matches, I'm sure
that's what I'm talking about.
Into the squad for the knockout.
Sergio Reguilon fixtures.
You would certainly think so, unless Ben Davis somehow makes a miraculous recovery and you stick him out there. But I think I'd rather see Reguilon at this point,
Dude,
which
against
again
Hoffenheim and
is wild to say.
Elfsberg, yeah.
Yeah, it truly is wild. Last bit of like note taking I had from the match itself was really nice to see Dejan Kulusevski wearing the armband in the absence of Son, Madison, Romero. Like just kind of beautiful. And Decky is just my sweet, freckly faced ginger boy, and I love him. And may he forever be a member of this club, because gosh, he is just still doing the thing. Like didn't have a landmark day by any stretch, but like showed the leadership, got out there, just continuing to be Decky, and I love that.
Dude, he's having a Premier League team of the season effort this year, and he will very much be the Tottenham Hotspur Player of the Year. It's very likely he'll win the Swedish play. Well, I don't know. Victor Gorgis is doing big things, but he absolutely is on pace to turn in the best season a Tottenham midfielder has had since Christian Eriksen, maybe Dele Alli even.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's get off of the game specifically, unless you guys had anything else to touch on from the game itself, because I frankly don't. Spurs are.
Oh, there was one thing that I wanted to mention before we left it, and that is fuck PGMOL. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think we went there, but happy to circle back. It is the time of circling back after all. Spurs sit 12th. Man United ended up drawing Liverpool today. We were watching the end of that before we started recording, so still a point ahead of Manchester United. So we can continue that banter at least for another few days. And it is of course Cup week, because Spurs will head into a match against Liverpool this week in the first leg. That is home Wednesday, and then they travel up to Tamworth for the FA Cup tie next weekend. So that is what we will look forward to. In the meantime, a report out this morning from the Athletic's David Ornstein that Ange Postecoglou is, quote, 100% safe in his job, which I know if you're not watching on YouTube, Todd is dancing about.
100%.
And I don't think it's that surprising either. I think it's nice to have this out there. It's nice to like hopefully quell some of the Ange out talk. Mm-hmm. But Spurs have it's January 5th, and Spurs have already announced a January signing. There's reports from this same report, in fact, from David Ornstein, that they plan to make more signings. They already have like players on both permanent and loan deals lined up that they're trying to make happen this month. This is just kind of a rubber stamp of, we know what's happening here, and we're moving forward with what we've been doing, and just kind of a reputable source for this report as well.
So how do we get this message to the media and the fans?
Well, this is coming from the media. That's the thing.
No. This is coming from David Ornstein, who
is a member of the who's a member of the media.
Respect and appreciate in Tottenham land. Okay, I'm talking about the media that actually gets in front of people and actually what their faces look like, right? The Jamie Carragers and the Tim Howards of the world, depending on where you are, like. How come these guys can't get it through their thick fucking skulls that this is what's going on at one of the 8 most expensive club in the world? Like I don't understand how this is so fucking hard for these people to understand.
Well, it's a project. I mean, that's what they don't understand. That's
kind of
what we've been saying.
The difference here is that Ornstein is a legitimate reporter committed to telling the truth, and the other people you mentioned are just pundits. So we might have to readjust our expectations for them.
It's the difference between Stephen A. Smith and like a journalist. Like that's what we're talking about. Yeah. That's the difference.
I am also glad to hear about this coming out, because I feel like if as fans we have this understanding that Ange is sticking around, we've got players coming back from injury, most of them by the end of the month. We've got new signings coming in. Well, I'm hoping that's going to be a plural and not just signing. But we have like all the ingredients going for a massive vibes revival heading into the most difficult portion of the season. So I think this could be a good thing.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'm just like, there's something about, I'm not trying to treat this as like, oh, this is the warm blanket I needed, like hearing this report, but like to an extent it is, because there has been just so much talk and chatter about, if they lose this one, it could be, but no, I'm
no, but I mean, those are from your pundits, bro. And that's right. What I'm saying. Like, Like, and we're seeing fans on social media trying to show us about how Graham Potter, this, that, and go fuck yourself. Like,
Yeah.
it's not what we're looking for. And like, I don't know, when we were mired in the doldrums of Jose ball and petulant Conte ball, right? All of us fans were just clamoring for Tottenham football, front foot football, football
And
that
we're
doesn't
seeing it.
make me wish for the days that I could watch paint dry, right? Like football where you go down a goal and you don't automatically go, oh shit, that's the game done right there. Like football, you can be proud of your team playing.
Well,
And
just think about how Conte or Mourinho would have approached that Newcastle game. Like, would any of us have gotten up early to watch that?
no,
Probably not.
and what we would have heard in what we would have heard in the media from them is slight digs at Daniel Levy for not giving them players that they needed in the summer. Ange didn't do that. Ange backed his players. And so, like, as we're going through this rebuild, I'm looking at this going, all we clamored for in the day is to not have a cunt as the manager of our team and to have front foot football that we could root for. And we have a guy that I would absolutely run through a brick wall for. And you can tell his players feel the same way as Ange in front of our team saying, this is who we are, mate. And I'm so amped for this because in a world full of Joses and Contes, to have an Ange is a blessing.
I completely agree. And I'm just glad that he's, I think I always believed that he was at least going to be here through the end of this season. Now, look, if the bottom fell out and this club was actually going to be like in a relegation battle, all bets are off. But I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that's where this club is going to be. Not only do we stay up, I don't think it's going to be even close. I think that's the only place it would have gotten a little bit hairy for Ange. But knowing full well that they are backing him, and not only that, but backing him in the sense that he's going to be around, but backing him in the sense that they're going to bring some players in to help what's gone on this season with injuries and illness and everything. Like, that's what's important. Now, this is where we shift the conversation to, holy shit, they've already made a signing and it's January 5th. Cool. But the surprise to me is that it's a goalkeeper. And
how's that surprising?
Well, it's surprising in this sense. And I guess we talked a little bit, a couple pods ago, I guess, about can they stem the tide until Vicario gets back? And obviously what we saw from Fraser Forster in the many weeks that he was starting was,
no.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, right. I was going to be a little bit more diplomatic. But you're right. No, like that's a perfect way to put it. No, we cannot. And then we saw Brendan Austin. We talked about that. And it's like, okay. Tottenham have signed a 21-year-old Antonin Kinski from Slavia Prague. He's a Czech Republic native. He comes in on a deal through 2031. And the line, and this again comes from the David Ornstein report from The Athletic, he's expected to challenge Guglielmo Vicario for a place in the starting 11, even when Vicario is healthy. That, I think, is the really important part to this signing, that he is not just a backup. And now, he may end up being just a backup, but he is not viewed as just being a backup. That's, I think, the part of this that excites me more than anything, because, and longtime listeners of the Depot will know, I haven't been critical of Guglielmo Vicario, but I've probably been the most critical of any of us here and many in the public. I haven't seen a lot of I like Vicario a lot. I think he's brought a lot of good things to this, but I want to see all of our players get pushed in this way. And the fact that they're bringing someone in that can potentially do that excites me to no end. I think it's a great move. It's a great move for this, but it begs the question, what is this club's plan? And I think we're starting to see it out for the long term, but what about for the short term? Because that's what's actually really interesting to me. Like, Vicario is still going to be out, we think, until probably March. So that gives us some runway here for not only for Kinski, who apparently goes by Tony, he's nicknamed Tony, which I love for him. Apparently he's going to be in the mix. I guess Fraser Forster's going to be in the mix. And I guess Brendan Austin, to an extent, is going to be in the mix. Who's the short-term goalkeeper for this club right now?
Tony Kinski sounds like a light-hitting middle infielder from the Houston Astros in the 1980s.
He does.
No, but I did a little bit of research on this guy, not a ton. Don't get me wrong. I just watched a few YouTube videos, right? No Nathan A. Clark, but he's really good with his feet. He's extremely comfortable with the ball at his feet.
Notably important in an Ange system.
Well, what this signing says to me is that this club continues to build for the future. That if we're going to, and you see it with Man City, if you're going to be in 5 competitions every single year, you've got to have 2 capable players at each position. And so I think that this is Tottenham's attempt to, again, it's right up our alley, right? As a 21-year-old kid, he's, has started in a lower league, great pedigree. His dad was a keeper for the Czech Republic and in the Czech league. Like he checks all the boxes, no pun intended, to for the keeper that we're looking to bring in for not only the system, but for the future of this overall project, and the type of football that we're trying to play.
I mean, y'all know that I'm a Vicario loyalist, but even I agree that it'll be a good thing for him to have legitimate competition, because Forster and Austin and God bless Alfie Whiteman, we're not providing that. So I think it's a positive, in the short term. And apparently this guy's on a 6-year contract. So clearly the club sees him as a number 1 somewhere down the line, if not immediately. So he's got plenty of time. I don't feel like we need to be under any rush with him. But
£12.5 million, Kaz. That's a pretty solid business if we're looking at a 6-year deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I have some questions about eligibility, so I don't actually know how quickly we're going to get to see him, but I can only imagine that the first game that he's available for, we will see him in goal instead of Forster or Austin.
Yeah, I would think so as well. The other thing too is that he's 7 years younger than Vicario. Like there is more runway here. I mean, by the time his deal expires, he will be Vicario's current age, just about. Like that's kind of wild to think about. Like this is a short and long-term move, which I think you don't always get, especially at Tottenham Hotspur.
Well, hold on. This is the way that Johan Lange has been setting up. Think about the moves that he's made. Vuskovic, Bergvall, Archie Gray,
Youngman Hook.
Hook. These are the plays that he's making, which are, we're bringing in these potentially, he's playing football fucking manager right now, and he's doing it exceptionally well.
Well, and we know that, but there are still a lot of fans who are traumatized by past transfer strategies and have no hope that, there's any sort of long-term plan. So I feel like, we're making a lot of smart signings. It's just, we do have to have a tiny bit of patience for some of them to come good. And I think a lot of fans are still uncomfortable with that concept. So,
well, I think that is a microcosm of the problem that we're seeing at the fan base at Tottenham, which is we got spoiled in the Pochettino era of, look, we can actually win. And we had some generational talent come through that team. And, our fan base went, oh, no, we're on par with all these other clubs, the Chelseas and the Scum and the Man Cities and all these. And we weren't. We were punching above our weight consistently. And it was clear that we were making the best of the situation that we had without actually knowing what to do whilst being there. We weren't prepared as an organization, as a squad. We weren't prepared for that success. And so fans are spoiled by that. And we're also come from a rich history for a fan base that's in their 40s of winning trophies. Like the fact that we haven't won is really, really hard for a Tottenham fan that got to see Chris Waddle and Glenn Hoddle and Tony Parks and Ozzy Ardiles. Like you see Tottenham, and there was a point in time where it was Tottenham and Manchester United had won a significant trophy for every decade for 60 years in a row. And then that just, as soon as Enoch got in, that just dried up. And so now, as we're at kind of the end of the arc, of the Enoch arc, the fact that we're going back to kind of a strategy that is designed around winning consistently for now and the future. There's a nuance there that's changed under Lunga. And I don't know that fans are picking up on that nuance yet. And it won't be, and I'm telling you right now, it won't be until we lift that first trophy again till fans will go, okay, what we're doing is actually working.
Yeah, it'll be a hell of a release. I guess, and look, Todd, like you, I haven't done a ton of research into Tony Kinski, but like I would expect he comes in, and I guess my only
great deal on metal siding if you go down and see him.
I guess this is I guess Fraser Forster's kind of getting Wally pipped here, is my guess. Like,
how are you going to Wally pip a 36-year-old? Get the fuck out of here.
Well, that's my point. Like he's I don't think he's going to be seen or heard from now that this has happened.
I'm surprised that they didn't take him out behind the F1 go-kart track and shoot him.
Well, I'm glad they're not doing that. I mean, I respect the man. He's done his best, but he's just not the guy. For those of you who don't know the Wally Pipp story, Google is your friend. I see Caroline looking. I know Caroline's not a baseball fan. She does not know the name Wally Pipp is the man who Lou Gehrig took over for back in the day, and Lou Gehrig went on to play 2,131 consecutive games, setting the record until that was broken in the mid 90s by some guy named Cal Ripken Jr. But I don't think we see Forrester again. Like that's and I'm fine with that. But it's just like, wow, that was it feels like it all happened kind of quickly to me, and I think that part of this signing for me is why it's so surprising. Caroline and I were talking before we started recording though, like was this the most important one, and to get over the line first in January was goalkeeper, even though we didn't really fully expect it, because it is I think it's an underratedly important position for the way that we play, just because of the need to be able to have the ball at your feet, to be able to play out the back, to be able to communicate with whatever the hell's in front of you, which of late has been a hodgepodge of, Jed Spence and Archie Gray in front of you. Like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I'm fine with this being the first one. It was just a little bit of a surprise to me, I guess.
Well, I think that Fraser Forster nearly cost us our League Cup progression. So to me, there was some urgency. Like I feel like the longer we kept him in, the more results he was going to single-handedly alter. So I think I'm fine with this being our first signing, even though we know there are other areas of the pitch where we're also really light. So, I mean, if this had to be the first one, I'm all for it.
If you look at just the stat sheets of the amount of goals that Fraser has conceded versus the amount of games that he's played, you would fire him too.
I don't disagree. And I love that you put it so succinctly and so harshly. I love both of those things. May there be many more signings. Like I think the fact that it's January 5 and we are talking about goalkeeper, check. Like let's move on to the next thing on the list. And there's plenty of obviously time to do it. So
I got one that I want to throw out there because I just saw it come across and it had me going.
Please,
Evan Ferguson from Brighton. The Irish striker to back up Solanke. He is a traditional number 9.
We have a Will Lancashire at home, though.
We do have a Will Lancashire at home. You're not wrong. But I also think both of us agree that Will Lancashire needs a Jamie Donnelly run in League One or the Championship before we see him in Tottenham colors for sure. Could
be the case. But, I also think that I do think striker's further down on my list of priorities, though. I will say I do think you need an attacker of some kind, whether that comes in the form of a striker or I would prefer it to be like a winger, like a left-sided dribbly winger that can just run shit. That'd be great. But whatever it may be, bring it on. I'm ready for more and more signings. Want to talk about signings on the women's side as well this week, because the women also got one over the line in the form of Denmark international Olivia Holt in a deal with FC Rosengard. This is a 23-year-old midfielder who has joined Spurs women through 2027 after 3 seasons in Sweden's top flight. There were also some outgoings to discuss on the women's side, Caroline, but before we even get to those, Spurs women have obviously been off on the winter break for a little while. They will come back next week in the FA Cup against Everton, but this is good. Seems like good business on their end as well. Just getting more bodies in the door and just continuing to revamp Robert Villaham's squad.
Yeah, I think this was a position we definitely needed a new player in after Grace Clinton obviously left the club after her loan. We just need the creativity, really, because we cannot play Drew Spence into the ground. I feel very strongly about this. I love Drew, fabulous player. She should not be playing 90 minutes every week at this point in her career. It's just not reasonable. Kind of like we talk about with Sunny, on the men's side. But
that's the exact comp I was going to make.
Yeah,
so I'm glad
exactly.
you did. It's the same situation.
So I'll be candid. I don't know a ton about this player personally because I don't watch the Swedish league. But it sounds like she's going to be a really good addition to the team because she has an eye for goal, like even from the midfield. She's very productive. And the downside, I think, is that she's coming off an injury. So I don't actually know how soon she's going to actually be able to play for us. So that's TBD. But I think in the long term, obviously with her age, like this is a really smart signing. And, I feel like I still kind of wish we would branch out from the Swedish league as our main recruitment base. But, otherwise this one really makes sense.
It has felt extremely that's just the place that they're going with Robert Villaham's experience there. But it is you mentioned the goal scoring. It's 25 goals in 47 league matches for Rosengard across 3 seasons. That is a good return. So especially from when you're talking about a midfielder. So I fully back that. The other news of the week is just a couple of outgoings. We talked earlier in the season about Caitlin Talbert, the American, the goalkeeper who had come in on loan from West Ham. She has returned to West Ham. It was only a 6-month loan. She played in 1 match. She looked okay. She, again, kind of brought some vibes. Seemed like it was a fun time, but it was always supposed to be a short-term thing. And then academy product, Eloise Hall has joined Bournemouth in a dual registration deal. I was reading about this. It's very interesting. A cool thing that they can do is she will train with Spurs on certain days and then go play with Bournemouth on certain days. So it's very, I don't know. It's like a cool deal. So Spurs are, making moves transfer-wise in January on the women's side as well as the men's side, which I really like. Thoughts on Talbert and even Hall, if you have any?
Well, I'll just start with Hall. I think you're right to point out the dual registration aspect. That has been a really smart move for us in recent seasons because we've had players like Lena Gunning-Williams, who's, gone out on loan under a similar scheme, and she's, been able to make an impact right away upon returning to the first team because she's been training with them week in and week out. So I think that all makes a lot of sense. And as for Caitlin, sad that we no longer have an American at the club. I just feel like the one game that we got to see her in, she maybe didn't have the level of composure that we need from a Spurs goalkeeper in terms of like the style that we play. I think she's a really great shot stopper and she's going to, hopefully have some success elsewhere. But yeah, I think she was not really a long-term prospect for us anyway. So it makes sense that, the end of her loan was the end of her loan. And, I'm really hyped about Eleanor Heaps getting her chance. So I think it's all working out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, it feels like Eleanor Heaps is stepping right into that role in the way that she should. As I mentioned, Spurs women do return to action. They're actually, unfortunately, playing the same time as the men next week in the FA Cup. I think they kick off maybe half an hour apart, but they will travel to play Everton in the FA Cup next Sunday and then return to WSL action a week later at home against Leicester City. So women are coming back with a vengeance after the break and hopefully well rested and can maybe make a cup run. We saw it last year. Why not do it again this year? That would be really, really quite cool. Anything else you guys have to get off your chest before we get out of here for a week? I feel like it's been a busy week in terms of Spurs, despite there only being 1 match and the window and everything kind of going on. It's been nice. Go ahead.
I got one question for you.
Please.
If you have to lose 1 game in this upcoming week, which one do you lose?
That's a really, really tough question.
I mean, it has to be
the Liverpool game, right?
First leg because we get a second leg, right?
Yeah. I don't
If
want to
it-
lose to Tamworth. I don't need that banter in my life.
No, exactly.
And I want the women to go up and beat Everton. They've surely shown they're capable of that. And that's a cup match knockout. All of them are cup matches, but the Liverpool one is not a knockout per se. It's a first leg of a 2-leg semifinal. So,
But it's at home,
Mhm.
and you know how
I think I know why you.
we play at Anfield. And so, and like the amount of voodoo that has existed against Spurs at Anfield specifically.
I think I know why you brought this up, Todd, because we were talking pre-recording about my mindset going into this Liverpool match. I'll get into this for a second before we get out of here today. I'm treating this Liverpool match on Wednesday kind of like a free hit because I don't expect Spurs to, over the 2 legs, be better than Liverpool and advance to the League Cup final. It's just where Spurs are right now between everything we've been discussing, not only on this podcast, but for weeks. I am hopeful that they can come into this match and maybe only lose it 2-1 and then go up to Anfield and pull off a miracle. Like I'm hopeful. I have optimism in that sense, but I'm not expecting anything. And I guess that's kind of just what I'm trying to be grounded about it and trying to be sensible in the fact that Liverpool are what they are right now. I mean, I know that they only got a draw against a struggling Manchester United team today at Anfield. A weird situation up there where they weren't even 100% sure they were going to play the game because of a snowstorm that ran through there. But I can't. No result at this point. Tamworth would set me off. Like if they can't go up there and play some kids against Tamworth next week, I will lose my shit on the podcast next week. That's a promise to the listeners. That will happen. But
I hope you cannot keep that promise.
I hope I can't either. But the difference between Liverpool and Tamworth is just that it's about as big as it can be. So like, yeah, I'll suffer defeat to Liverpool, and I don't expect that it's going to go well, but I'm going to be hopeful that it can. I'm going to hope that they can put the effort that they did in against Newcastle the other day and not get the chicanery that they got on the other end of it. Like that would be my hope, because I semi agree with Ange in that the chicanery is what cost them the game. Like that's what I mean. I do think that the momentum of that Joe Linton handball decision or lack thereof was important and crucial to the way that match played out. I thought Spurs were game for it, despite, again, everything going on around them.
I have to agree.
Go ahead.
I'll just add that I feel very kind of sad that this 2-legged tie with Liverpool is happening when it's happening with our injuries and everything going on, because we worked so hard to get to the semifinal, and it's really unfortunate. But I do feel like if we're going to talk about realistic chances of a trophy, the FA Cup getting such an easy draw for the first round, we're going to have players back for the later rounds. Like that's definitely the one that I feel like we need to, make sure we're still in at the end of this week. And for the women's team, same thing. I really want them to go on that FA Cup run again. That was the highlight of last season, on both sides of the club for me. So I'm really excited for that one.
Now, don't get me wrong. I want an FA Cup more than I want to take my next breath. But we're also in a cup semifinal right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no guarantees for cup semifinals. There's no guarantees at all. I don't know if
I think you also have to look at what's on the other side of that.
I was going to say, but looking at the injuries, looking at the illnesses, looking at the fixture list coming up in the league, in the Europa League, looking at all the things that are upcoming. You play the kids, you crash out against Tamworth. It's you catch banter for a week, but you beat Liverpool at home and go to Anfield, with a legitimate chance to advance to a final. You still got 6 more rounds of the FA Cup after this, no?
You know what, Todd? Let's just say screw it. We're going to win all the games this week.
Like it. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think there's no better place to leave it than that. That will do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes. I've mentioned it a couple times in the episode. We are on YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. You can watch and see our beautiful faces, see our awesome digital Spurs gear as well. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. You can follow us on social media. We're talking X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all the different places. We are at Tottenham Depot. You You can also reach out to us via email if need be at tottenhamdepot@gmail.com. You can follow Todd at TC_Show on X or at the Todd Father on Blue Sky. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. You can follow me at A Stetko. We'll be back with you next week to talk cups and hopefully some more signings as well. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.